Hello, everyone. Again, this is Ethan Shapiro, the climate change realtor with Coldwell Banker, founder and manager of the most innovative real estate sales company, back for another episode of Changing the Climate, a show where we talk about the changing world around us and how we can make it better. I am very excited to have my guest, Miss Kelsey Grant. She is a senior at the University of Colorado Boulder, studying both political science and my personal favorite, philosophy. She's a longtime volunteer for the Citizens Climate Lobby, where she currently works part-time as a conservative fellow. So Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I'm really, like, as I said in the last couple episodes, I'm really starting to enjoy this show. And so we just love to start the show by getting some background on you and who you are. And yeah, just that.
Great. Well, like you said, I'm a senior at CU Boulder. I
Go
have been
Buffs.
exactly, and I've been with CCL since January 2019. I actually got started in climate and environmental issues during my time as Sunday school teacher. So I'm a church girl. I was making environmental ministries at my church and talking about environmental stewardship in my capacity as a Sunday school teacher, and that was where it really caught my passion for climate action. And my church was actually partner with CCL, and that was how I really got my foot in the door. I just showed up to a meeting. A week later, they tasked me with starting a chapter at CU Boulder, which I did. And then that was really the start to a long journey, becoming a co-leader of the Boulder chapter. I ended up being a higher education regional fellow, where I would mentor students throughout the region. And then I ended up as a conservative fellow, which I'm doing right now. And I'm on our conservative caucus executive team. So that's kind of the rundown of the last nearly 2 years. But it's been a ride, and it's been great.
Beautiful. But yeah, thanks for that. Was the church that you worked at in Boulder?
No, it was in Denver. So I'm a church hopper.
Nice.
I go to a church in Denver and also in Boulder, but the one I found about CCL was in Denver.
Cool. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it. I think anyone who does volunteers their time or works with the church, just fostering community and doing stuff for other people is great. But how did you get into political science and philosophy? Have you always been interested in just the way the world works or the deep questions of life?
You know, I went into college wanting actually to be a pediatrician. I wanted to lead a career in some kind of care profession. I just wanted to help people. And I thought that being a pediatrician or a doctor was the best way to do that. And then, my sister went into nursing school, and I just realized that really didn't fit me in how I could best serve the world and my community, given my own natural talents and abilities. And I thought law school would be the best avenue for me to help people. And that's why the natural fit for an undergraduate degree is political science. I was actually a political science and English major. I switched English to philosophy because philosophy was so difficult for me, and it's still incredibly difficult for me, but I love the intellectual challenge. It keeps me on my toes.
What do you find difficult about it? Is it the logic? Is it the density of the topics? Or is it the lack of answers?
All of it. There's a joke. They say all it takes is one philosophy course to really screw your brain up, and I
100%.
understand what
100%.
they mean by that. It just, there's so many questions, and like you said, there's a lack of answers, and I like certainty. And when you're in philosophy, you don't get that. So it really goes against my own instincts and what I like intellectually. But it's just so complex in so many ways. The logic is difficult, but it never stops me from thinking, and I enjoy that.
Well, thinking is great. Speaking of thinking, have you had a Jume Wingo or Alistair Norcross or Matt Pike? Any of these guys ring a bell?
Uh, no, I,
No.
I keep ending up with like ancient philosophers, and it's typical American
Did you have Don
philosophers.
Bailey?
I, I sure did.
I love
Yes.
Don Bailey. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Everyone loves him.
Yeah, well, you took ancient philosophy.
I did take
And
ancient
so you
with
studied
him.
Plato in his class, right?
I did. Yes, he has his own take on Plato compared to the other course. It's very hard for me to wrap my head around that, but he's a fantastic instructor,
Yeah,
entertaining.
it's hard to wrap your hand around anything. What I really learned in that class is showing you how much content can be in just a few passages. Like, you don't understand how much meaning is behind. Like, we've been studying the Republic. What is it for many? Is it millennia yet, or is it just centuries? Is it how old is the Republic? I think it's a few thousand years old.
I have no idea.
No worries.
I
We
should
both
know.
obviously we both didn't pay enough attention, but
He
yeah,
didn't teach us those details. It doesn't
no
matter.
worries. Cool. Well, I love philosophy. I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll get into it a little bit on the show. But yeah, would you want to explain what a citizens climate lobby is and how you got interested in it?
Absolutely. CCL is it's an international nonprofit organization that, in a nutshell, works towards really catapulting federal climate legislation into the national spotlight. So we're international. We're largely based in the United States. We have about 200,000 members, about 600 chapters, and like I said, they're across the globe. Right now, our main focus is on building political and public support in our communities for a single bill in Congress, which is the bill that it's a carbon pricing bill in Congress that has the most co-sponsors of any carbon
Very
pricing bill
cool.
right now. Yes, and it also has bipartisan support. So it's called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, or HR 763. And in a nutshell, what this bill would do is it would place a price on carbon. So it places a tax on fossil fuels at the source of extraction, and it takes this money and we redistribute it back to the American people. So it offsets the regressiveness, and it also addresses a few political issues that come along with, implementing a tax. But it also has an international component that incentivizes other countries to reduce their emissions, because while it would be significant for the United States to reduce our emissions, that's incredibly important. This is a global problem, and we need to have an international component and effective climate solution. But our goal is to build political support for this within our community. So we focus on empowering the individual, and making sure each person that comes to our doors is given the opportunity to really enhance their own natural skills to make them the most effective advocate that they can be. And another really important part about CCL is that we are nonpartisan. We take that very seriously. We work with everybody and anybody. We work with Republicans and Democrats, no matter who you are. And CCL makes us unique from other environmental groups is that we maneuver this middle area in the climate world, and that's just so crucial, because for a long-lasting climate solution, we need bipartisan support. So that's what we do.
Well, that sounds amazing. I am curious when you say the bill, it takes funds or it proposes some kind of fee on using carbon, which I think is great. But then you mentioned that it redistributes that money to where exactly, and how is that determined? If you know.
Yes. So it's taking a step back. So yeah, we put a tax on fossil fuels, source of extraction. We generate a ton of revenue, and now we have a huge problem. It's regressive. Energy prices went up, and now the government has a huge pot of money, which gives conservatives heartburn. So our solution to the problem is we give it back to the American people through a monthly dividend, and those dividends are not equal on they are equal, and they're not dependent on income. So it's not wealth redistribution, or anything like that. But what this dividend does is it offsets that regressiveness. So about 60% of low middle class Americans would be made financially better off with this carbon fee and dividend than without. So it goes directly back to consumers.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot for me to take in right there. That's extremely interesting. And this has support from lots of different politicians, I suppose. How long have you guys been working on getting this passed?
So CCL, so carbon pricing itself has been around for some time. Using that as a mechanism for environmental problems is not a
Sounds
new
great.
concept. Milton Friedman spoke about it. This particular bill, I can't remember past like a few years ago, there was a bill in the last session that was very similar to this one, and it was reintroduced in this session. But we've been focusing on carbon fee and dividends for I think like the last decade. Um, you're talking about like the support from politicians. So I will say there is a broad coalition of support for this policy framework from the far right to the far to the far left. Last year, 3,500 economists signed a statement in support of revenue neutral carbon pricing, saying it is the most cost effective solution to reducing our emissions. And this comes from economists on the right and on the left.
How is it different from a carbon tax?
Well, it is a carbon tax. What
Okay.
really it is a carbon tax. That's how it goes into the tax code. What really gets interesting is how people what they do with the money. So if you want just like a
Right.
basic carbon tax, what happens is you put a price on carbon, and energy prices go up, and that consumers like myself and you have to bear that cost. But what this one does is it has an additional mechanism that solves that problem, so consumers do not have to face rising energy costs, or a regressive kind of policy.
And will gain support because people will get more money back in their pocket. That's so smart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for about it's for about 60% of Americans would have more money coming in than they would be losing due to higher energy prices.
How is that like calculated?
How is it calculated?
How do you know like 60% because like certain people use more energy so they'd have to pay more so it would cost them more whereas some certain people use less, something like that?
It's so take a step back. So low income folks actually spend more on energy in proportion to their income
Yeah.
compared to wealthier folks. But how this is distributed, since we're placing the tax everywhere, and we're dividing it up into equal sums, how it does end up lower income, because it's more of like an absolute number. You divide it, and then low middle class folks end up having more, so they spend less on energy in absolute terms. And when you couple that with a dividend that is in equal lump shares, it does work out in that way, where they have more money coming in than they actually spend. I don't know if that makes sense. I can
No, it does.
provide
No,
studies later.
of course, yeah. No, it does make sense. That's really cool. So I've been like slowly or starting to ramp up a little bit, reaching out to all these different organizations, and I'm like really looking for. I'm such a pragmatic person. I just want A, then B, then C. But like life's not like that. But yeah, I'm curious. So are you involved with any other like climate change organizations at all?
I I CCL is close, friends with a lot of organizations, which
Well, I'm sure we're all working for the same thing. You
we
know
are
what I'm
all
saying?
working. That's such a valuable reminder, because there are divisions within the environmental and
What
climate
and
space.
what's interesting is in politics as well, or just in life, it's funny how the um the people you usually hate the most are the ones who have the same goal as you but are going about it a different way, and I think that's so silly.
It
Yeah,
it is very silly.
yeah,
I would agree. There are different groups in the environmental space. They all have their own strategies for addressing this issue, and they're all getting at the problem in a different way and at a different angle, and we're working towards the same goal. But what's so self-destructive is when we start saying that person has the wrong strategy because it's not our own, and that's quite detrimental. We're all on the same team. We're working towards the same goal. To get back to like your original question, other groups I work closely with are like Republic EN. So it's a Republican group. It was founded by Bob Inglis, a former Republican congressman, and they work towards really empowering and activating the conservative voice in the climate space. I also work closely with Students for Carbon Dividends, Young Conservatives for Carbon Dividends. I have lots of peers and friends who are in more progressive groups, like Sunrise. I personally haven't worked with them, but I I'm in close contact with those folks, and I have good relationships on the right and the left, and also Climate Leadership Council.
cool. So is what attracted you to CCL the more political focus because it's related to like what you're studying with your degree, or do you think that a top-down approach is more effective to solving this, basically this, I don't know if the word is insurmountable or surmountable or huge problem we're dealing with, which is we're addicted to dirty energy.
Well, I will say it is dirty energy, but it's also good energy. Fossil fuels have done so much for us
Let's
and
change the
advanced in
world.
something really. It's catapulted us in the right direction of human development and flourishing, and we always want to remember that. So like what brought me to CCL was you kind of got on a few of them. One was it was politically oriented. I loved politics. Well, it's a love-hate relationship. It
Such is
also
life.
works exactly, especially in this day and age. It also works towards effective solutions. So yes, um, there are two different kind of approaches to, well, there's several approaches to climate change, but in a nutshell, sure, you can focus on like individual choices and things that you do in your individual life to reducing your own carbon footprint, which are incredibly important. And I want to applaud anybody who are trying to take steps in that direction. But another really important element, and I think this is the most crucial, is, widespread, like large scale policy and structural change in our policies. And that's what CCL works on. So we work at the federal level with policy. And that's just crucial for driving down our emissions. It's unfortunate that individual actions just aren't enough. It's a part of the
Mm-hmm.
solution, but it's inadequate. And so that also brought me to CCL. They're serious about solutions and combating the problem. But another thing is, and this is more of a personal note, is, I started in the climate space as, a Christian. And, my faith teaches me, you love your enemies. You should be loving towards anybody. And that's very hard when you're engaging in the political space. But what CCL does, and it's rather, radical, is they try their hardest, and they have many cases of success. They try to put conservatives and progressives in the same space, and they teach each other how to see the good in one another, how to work together side by side towards the same goal. And that really seemed to resonate with some of my most fundamental values. And that was really the biggest sticking point for me in terms of joining CCL.
That's amazing. And that's the kind of thing I'd really love to support. And thank you so much for coming on the show and saying something like that. Because I think it's more pivotal now than any other time. It seems like the country is extremely divided. And I think we're just a nation of people who love to argue and think that we're right and better than others. But I think that over time, the truth rings out. I like to say that. But yeah, a great thing about this podcast format is you can get someone and just really just talk. Like I really believe, like you said, putting a conservative and a progressive, whatever, in the same room is, it's like passion is good, but like just willingness to just listen. Just like you can completely disagree with the other person. And I'm lucky that I've had friends from all over the world. I have friends from Africa, Australia, Europe, conservative, liberal, Republican, all over the place. And I'm so much happier and healthier and wiser because I just give people a chance to just be who they are and say what they want to say. And I think that's so valuable. So to
I
transition a little
appreciate
bit
that.
into I mean, I think our generation will take care of everything, and then there'll be problems that we cause that our kids will have to take care of. But
Exactly. We have blind spots. I think my generation needs to remember that. I think too many young folks are acting in a very morally righteous
mm,
way. And I think my generation, anybody really, could use a dose of humility here and there. But yeah, you're totally right. You talked about the importance of listening, and that's what we do in CCN, not only for, there's just a moral value to getting along with people, but it's also absolutely necessary. So bipartisanship for CCL is a strategy. It is not a winning strategy to have a Democrat only bill and then say we're to cram something through a Congress, say after a blue wave, and say that we're done. That's not how it's going to work. You actually need a bipartisan solution because that's the only one that's going to last for years to come. And climate change is a
last,
long
that's the
problem.
key. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
do you want to talk about your work as a conservative fellow, what you do as far as outreach and how it compares to what you were doing previously with the organization?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in a nutshell, the role of a conservative fellow. So we have a small team of conservative fellows, and our positions and roles are kind of individualized, and you kind of get to choose what you want to do, which is a really great thing about our
Volunteer,
program.
right? Completely.
No, so for the fellows, we receive a stipend
Okay, my
from
bad.
the organization. No, that's fine. But a lot of our work is still on a volunteer basis, or at least that's how it works out for me. Um, so in a nutshell, a conservative fellow is there to recruit and maintain our conservative membership, but also, and this is most important, is to activate our conservative membership. So providing conservatives a space. So we actively work towards carving out a space for conservatives in CCL who are passionate about the climate cause, and provide them an avenue to be actively engaged. So like I said, the roles can be very individual. Like it depends on what fellow you are. For me, and I can speak only for my own role, what I've been doing is in January, I launched a campaign in Colorado to get a carbon fee and dividend resolution passed in the Colorado legislature. And we have been working with a Democrat and a Republican who have agreed to be our lead sponsors for this resolution. And our lobbying efforts, which has involved a team of young conservatives in Colorado, we've been actively building relationships and working with and lobbying more than I can count Republicans in the Colorado legislature, and that's really been the focus of my work, is really trying to push this resolution, hopefully across the finish line in the next session. But in addition to that, smaller tasks is like coming onto podcasts like this, which is one of my
Thank
favorite
you.
things. Getting to meet wonderful folks like yourself, getting to write op-eds, getting to write op-eds and letters to the editor, giving presentations to local Republican groups. That's what it's looked like for me. But it really does, it does vary.
Yeah, what are some challenges you face as far as talking to conservatives, or interesting stories you've encountered over the last year or so?
I have had conservative outreach has its own challenges, just like progressive outreach does. I mean, just taking a step back, when you're a conservative fellow, your goal is to build trust and relationships with other conservatives in your community, but at the same time, you're also fighting an uphill battle because of the political context that we're working in. So climate is obviously seen as a democratic issue, and my job is to convince people that we're not to convince them, but to show them that there is a place for conservatives in the climate space.
How did it
And
get like that?
I've been asking myself where it blows my mind
Was it
because
Nixon the first? Yeah.
conservatives have a phenomenal legacy of environmental leadership. So like President Grant established the first national park, which Teddy Roosevelt later said set the model for all other national parks. Reagan signed the Montreal Protocol. Bush Sr. used market-based solutions to address air pollutants. Conservation environmentalism has been a conservative value and an issue of the Republican Party for a long time, and it did seem to flip. And I haven't quite understood that where that happened. I do know something interesting happened when Al Gore became a more prominent
Mm.
politician. You'd hear Republicans say, if Al, this one Republican, I don't even remember his name, but he was reflecting on his time serving with Al Gore. And he said, if Al Gore said something, Republicans would want to do the opposite. And I think that problem also
Classic.
trickled into the climate problem. I'm not attributing polarization on the climate issue to Al Gore.
Hmm.
It's such a complex issue, and that would be a gross oversimplification of it. But yeah, there's I don't know where that flip happened. And honestly, I would like to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, that would be good. So as far as challenges, do you find that most people in your age, so I take it you speak to a lot of young conservatives, right?
I do.
Do you find that most people in our age bracket are still fighting this reality, or do they do you hear a lot of climate denial in our age group, or is kind of most everybody just accept it what it is?
No, what is so interesting, and like you can, Pew Research has uh, really highlighted this trend that young Republicans and conservatives are young Republicans and young Democrats are nearly identical on attitudes about the climate issue and the degree of urgency. Now, it might where they might diverge is, on the solutions to the problem, which is a
Naturally.
fine discussion to have as long as we agree there's a problem. But yeah, so a majority of millennial and younger conservatives care about the climate issue, and they also think that the government needs to be doing something about it. Another great organization to look at is ACC, the American Conservation Coalition. It's led by young Republicans who are passionate about the climate issue, and they're trying to get something done. It's just phenomenal. So the conservatives who I come across in my age group, they want to see something done. They are hungry for a GOP strategy. Like I'm like I often talk to other like college Republicans at CU Boulder, and they'll often say, sometimes progressive peers will come up to them and say like, what's the Republican Party doing about climate change? And they often don't have any ammunition in response to a question like that.
That sounds
And I
quite
think,
combative also.
yeah, that's politics.
Yeah, sure.
But they're hungry for a comprehensive GOP platform on climate.
Right. So, what is the strategy for getting the youth involved as far as CCL is concerned? Or do they want people to go and lobby the government, or do you guys? Yeah, I don't know. I'll let you take that away.
Yeah. I love the question about how to engage our youth. So when we think about climate change and how youth are being involved in the problem, we think about, like Greta Thunberg or, climate strikes and things like that. And that's a wonderful form of engagement. I applaud young folks and people of all ages for trying to get out there and to do something about the issue. What I would like to do is I would like to get those kids off the streets and get them into lobby meetings.
Mm.
Um, it does not surprise me. When I was working as a regional fellow and overseeing the higher education outreach and working with college students, a common attitude I would encounter among young people is that they just hate politics. They hate our political institutions. They feel like this democracy isn't their own, and to a large extent, a lot of them have just given up hope. And they don't want to have anything to do with lobbying or politicians unless it's like yelling at them. And so what we like to do as CCL is we like to empower young people, to teach them how to use the tools and their own skills to build relationships with their lawmakers and to push us in the right direction. I would love to just see young people in the halls of Congress instead of in the streets. Of course, there's a place for public
Been there.
demonstrations like that. Yes, there's a place for those kinds of public demonstrations. But young people need to know that their voices are listened to when they go into these lobby meetings. Politicians know that the young people, our voters, are going to be sticking around for a long time. We're also the largest voting bloc. We have tremendous political power. We just need to learn how to use that political power in a more effective way. And I don't think striking is always the most effective way. I think it's playing a part. And I have to thank Greta and climate strikers. You have to thank them for what they've done. But I would love to see some movement into the lobbying space, because that's also where you learn about policy. You have to be very thoughtful about what you're doing, and I think we would all benefit from it.
All right. So I'll just throw this. What is lobbying exactly?
I had a conversation with my thesis advisor about this yesterday, and we were wrestling with the question, what is lobbying? Lobbying is not just giving money contributions, and that's not really CCL's way. Lobbying is essentially just relationship building.
Hmm.
And it can take many forms. Like, well, let's say, for example, fossil fuel companies, they know that lobbying is not just money, it's also relationship building. It's calling people up, it's checking in on people, forming relationships founded on respect and trust. And in CCL, that's what we do. We
Citizens Climate Lobby.
lobby, and that
Hmm.
it's about forming relationships that are founded on respect with our politicians. And from those relationships, you can really begin to move people in the right direction. I say, like, when you lobby your politicians, but you also lobby people in your communities. And lobbying also goes beyond just sitting in the room with your politician. It also is but primarily involves building support back home in your community, and then going back to your political office saying, hey, this is a progress we've made. These are the number of endorsements, number of petition signatures, or something like that we've earned in your district. But it all comes down to respectful relationship building. And we actually have a rule in CCL. We say, if you cannot walk into a politician's office and feel overwhelmingly thankful for their service to our country, then if you can't do that, then don't be in there. Go to a different office. But you need to be able to address each politician and public leader with respect and gratitude.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, everyone's just playing their part in the world, trying to do their best, providing a service, whatever they've been kind of herded into or chose their own path, whatever it may be. Something I think people don't realize is the true power of your voice, especially as Americans. We are so influential on the world stage. Every single American has such power. And what's, becoming more and more apparent to me, what's so easy to see is most people don't use their voice. Like, when one person comments on like one of my videos, like, I'm just getting started here with my business, like, that touches me. And when I like reach out and make videos for people and someone's like becomes inspired, it's amazing how like 90% of people will not re-engage with someone. Like, they'll, like, most people don't comment on videos and don't, I have a thought I'm going with here. It's just, if you do take action and use your voice, you will have an impact. Whether it's 0.5%, 1%, or 20%, if you really believe in what you want to put out into the world, then just go out there and do it. Like what you're doing, like, you're making huge strides. Like, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for doing everything you're doing for climate change. Thank you for finding what you want to do in life and believing in yourself. And just, even though you're in this crazy environment that everyone has this huge negative conception of, right? You're still like, this is what I'm interested in. I want to help people. I want to make a difference. And you're using you and your voice, and it is powerful. And I think people really, really underestimate the power that one person can truly have on the world. That's just what I think.
Absolutely. I think most people want to use their voices. I think a lot of people are agitated by the problems going on in this world.
They
And
think
I
it won't
think
work.
they think it won't work. And
They're
that
wrong.
is, I resonate with that. I
Mm.
often wonder, am I being effective? And to a large extent, I have no idea. So I try to be humble. But, the thing about CCL is, for folks who are uncertain about how to effectively use their voice, what CCL does so well is that we will look at your unique, your innate talents and abilities and skills, and we will teach you how to make the most of those. Just you as your individual, everyone has something to bring to the table, and we'll teach you how to make the most of it. And that's what I love about CCL. We take ordinary folks and we transform them into incredibly effective and impactful citizens. I mean, we have students who will enter CCL not knowing anything about climate change, and now some of them are working in Congress, actually, in offices on climate and energy, because CCL trains their volunteers so well, and really empowers them. So yes, I mean, we not only need to find our voice, but we need to learn how to do it effectively. And there are more effective ways to use your voice than others.
Yeah. So as far as the situation we're in now, I don't know if it's legitimate or it's just like constructed, but it seems like if you're on one team, you hate the other team. If you're on the other team, you hate the other. Is this the reality of the situation, or are we all similar? I don't know how to feel about it anymore, because it seems like it's like, oh, there's no good people if you are, the opposite political stance for me. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's just searching for a happy, healthy life, like filled with love, whether they want to admit it or not. I'm a bigger loudmouth than most people. I'll say like life is about love. People don't like to say stuff like that, but it's true, and everyone's looking for that. So it just seems like some way for us all to just get it figured out and taken care of. I don't know. I guess, yeah, go ahead.
No, I in a way that actually that really does touch my heart. I've said this on another podcast, and I stole this from another CCL volunteer, but he would say nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to ruin this planet. If you're look, American politics is defined by tribalism. We get very stuck in the mindset that the person on our team is just a horrible person. And if you were convinced, say you're a progressive and you're convinced that all conservatives are bad, you're condemning half of the country. And there's a good chance that a statement that's that extreme and broad is going to be wrong. And that's a really important, realization to take a step in the right direction.
Has that person sat down with a conservative person, not on even a podcast, just sit down in a room and just talk to a human being and see if you think they're the evil, malicious person you really have this idea of? Because most people are just getting up, living their life, doing their thing, trying to be better, trying to love their family. Like that's all we really are. And it's like it seems like constructed to me, like that we're this the other side is so different and evil is just it just doesn't seem legitimate. I don't know.
I agree. To say that such a large group of people is just bad. I'll never be sold on something like that. But it's so unfortunate that so many of us have become convinced that that is true. And it's really, really difficult to
What can
unravel
we
that
do?
political narrative.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about
Come
it.
to CCO, we will teach you how to do it.
Yeah, I think just spread love every day.
Yes, that's the goal. That's the leading value. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty of doing it, it can be so difficult. I experience it in my own work. I will encounter people who oppose me, who think the worst of me, and how having to navigate the situations is just so difficult. But it's incredibly rewarding. And but you're asking like, well, how do you do that? I would suggest CCL. There's also another organization called Braver Angels, which we actually partner with. Braver Angels is a phenomenal organization. They are all about depolarizing America. That's their catchphrase. And what they do is they actually get
Love it.
Republicans and Democrats in a room, and they've, in what you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, was listening.
That's the key.
If it's in the pre-COVID area, they would have they'd alternate. They'd have like Republicans in the middle of circle in a room, but Democrats on the outside, or vice versa. And the folks on the outside would have to listen to those sitting on the inside, and you just have to listen and get to understand them. But that's where some of us might, who are interested in kind of combating this problem of American polarization and partisanship, that might be a good place to start. But if you're in the climate space specifically, and you're worried about this problem, I strongly recommend CCL. We take it very seriously. It's
Yeah.
not easy. When people come to CCL and they take this, this mission of depolarizing climate, it's very challenging. Personally, it goes up and down. But that's where you will learn how to take the right steps in
Beautiful.
combating this problem you were getting at.
I'm 100% going to come to a meeting, no doubt. There's nothing but positive things to be learned. But just to transition a little bit here, I'm curious because you're in my kind of like age demographic. I don't know if that's related, but what are your thoughts on like the American diet, what we're consuming every day? I know we've talked a lot about top down, not necessarily individual changes, but the fact of the matter is like the agriculture industry and the meat industry are such large contributors to this climate change issue. I'm curious what your just personal thoughts, just because I'm interested to hear your opinion as far as like meat consumption or factory farms, or even just like large scale commercial agriculture versus like local farms and stuff.
One skill that I'm actually proud of is, and I don't mean this immodestly, it's admitting when I don't know much about a topic. And I will say this
Good
is one of the
response.
topics, but what I will say, I actually am a vegetarian.
Okay.
Um, for both
How
moral
long?
and uh, since I was maybe 10,
Yeah,
11.
it's a long time, longer than
So,
me.
so it's been some time. So you're vegetarian
Well, yeah,
too?
I'm just plant based. Yeah, but that
Yeah.
it was like a one day like eating like I think my last meal of meat was actually like veal, like baby cow, and then it was like bang, like never meat. I haven't had meat since then.
Just
But
cutting it off cold.
well, so things like I'm taught things, and then I said this in the last podcast. They or I didn't even say it on the podcast. They lay dormant in my mind, and then something just like clicks. Like this week, the same thing happened with my business. Like that's just the way I am. I get information. Same thing with all my college classes. I would take a class at CU. I'd be like, I didn't learn anything. Fuck school. And then like in the summer, I'd be like, wow, I know a lot about business all of a sudden. And it's just like that's just the way I am. So that's what happened with
Hmm.
veganism for me as well.
Really? I
Yeah.
I used to be a vegan, then I went to vegetarianism. I guess I'm just a weak one. Um,
No,
but
it's a personal choice. I'm just curious your
yeah.
thoughts as far as
It,
the solution. Like people are very apprehensive about their food. Like people love their food. Like how can because but we need I'm not going to say we need to. I know we need to stop using fossil fuels, but I'm not going to tell because I mean I would like to say like don't eat meat anymore, but I'm trying to be a realist here. Like people are so protective of that. They'll twist any argument to make sure they can still have at least some meat. So I don't know. I was just curious your thoughts because you're so involved in the climate community.
well, I mean, I think your characterization of the problem seems pretty on point. People don't like to give up things which they like
Mm.
in their daily lives, which is one benefit of CCO. We're not going to be getting after people for eating a hamburger or something like that. But yeah, I like I said, I don't know much about it, but given my limited knowledge, um, it is an important part of the equation. Um, but yeah, my knowledge is quite limited there. I can talk about carbon pricing and policies, subsidies, regulations. Happy to do that. I will leave that other topic to the experts because I won't be able to help many
No
people.
worries. And that's what we have you for. And I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Just the last thing I'd like to just touch on is how should individuals respond with another 4 years of the Trump administration, who's been objectively bad for climate regulation? Curious, how would one respond were Trump to become elected once again for 4 more years?
First, please come to CCL.
Good
I
answer.
well, really. So strategically speaking, with another 4 years of a Trump administration, in that scenario, the bipartisanship is
Uh-oh.
going to be even more important. But I think people, okay, okay, I was saying in Trump administration, bipartisanship will be even more important. I think people will feel this very natural urge for those who are opposed to Donald Trump to want to go very far to the left. They're going to be very upset. And what I would encourage people is, for the sake of strategy, we need to get something done. I do not think in a Trump administration we're going to see any major um, uh, steps in the right direction for climate change. But it is still a key time for us to be building relationships with our Republican congressmen and women. And we feel this tension in CCL. I think, majority of our volunteers are progressive. It's a left-leaning organization. And we feel this tension and pressure to keep ourselves, in the center and nonpartisan. And we feel that pressure, and we take very seriously, putting our stake in the ground, saying this is who we are. We are in the middle, and we are going to make sure we're bringing Republicans and Democrats on board. And in a Trump administration, or say the Republican Senate, that is absolutely essential. If you do not build that bipartisan support, I'm sorry, but you're not going to move anywhere. And if we have a Biden administration, let's talk about that scenario also.
Sure.
Say the Senate flips and say Biden wins. Democrats now have a window of opportunity to cram through an likely all Democrat piece of legislation.
Strange.
That is a very short-term solution. We have seen with things like the Affordable Care Act, and then things like the Clean Power Plan, things which do not have bipartisan support and are very controversial, do not last. We cannot cram something through only for the next administration, which will likely be more conservative. So we go back and forth, will eventually chip away at the integrity of that bill. So I think in both scenarios, I think a lot of us are going to have to remind ourselves to keep our sights, our eyes, on the long game, and which is bipartisanship.
That makes a lot of sense.
But I also think in a Trump administration, just one more comment, Republicans right now, and I think this will remain in the Trump presidency, feel pressure on the climate issue. They know very well. They should, and
a lot.
Not just for the sake of.
I'll go there myself and talk to them.
They should good build relationships with Republicans, but they should, not only for the sake of the issue, but also for political reasons. They know very well young conservatives care about this, and we're getting much louder as time goes on. So even in a Trump administration, they're going to be thinking about this issue, and the people who will be talking to as Republicans will be folks like CCL. And with Democrats as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That was enlightening, Kelsey. I appreciate it. What do we say to those who throw their arms up, scream into a pillow, and are frustrated and are also focused on the climate? How do we keep the spirits up and keep the fight going in the event of a Trump presidency?
Well, the first thing is, I run into this all the time. It's crucial to convey understanding for people who are frustrated, make people's feelings seem legit, and I imagine they are, obviously. But again, what I would say, and I was talking to another peer in CCL about this, is how do we actually keep our volunteers' spirits up? And I think the biggest thing is keeping them in CCL and showing them that we can and will have breakthroughs on the conservative and Republican side. And we do it all the time. It's sometimes very slow, but I have seen a lot of, I think, more progressive volunteers who are on the fence about the bipartisan cause. When you bring to them moments of success and you show them, hey, that this approach works, it gives them some energy to keep going. So if you're frustrated, I recommend coming to CCL. You're going to meet other frustrated people on the right and left for all different kinds of reasons. Some people could be happy with the outcome of the election, but they could be upset that people are so upset on the left. You never know. But people are all frustrated, and I encourage people to come, and we will provide you a home, and we'll help you be the best volunteer that you can actually be.
Well, shout outs to shout outs. Shout it out, y'all. CCL, how can people get involved with the organization? Go on the website, I suppose? Easiest way?
You can. Yeah, citizensclimatelobby.org. If you are in Boulder, we have monthly chapter meetings that are held virtually. You can just Google Boulder chapter, and then you can pretty easily find our information. You could also go to the Energy Innovation Act.org for information on the bill. But yeah, it should be pretty easy just to do a little research. Just put Boulder chapter, and you should find us.
Excellent. And I will be there. Long overdue. Well,
you should. We'd love to have you.
100%. Kelsey, it has honestly been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come and enlighten us and show a little positivity in the political sphere, because I think we
Oh,
really need that. Very optimistic for your future. Let me know when you're running for office. I'd be happy to do some supporting for you.
you're too kind.
Otherwise, yeah, no, it's my pleasure.
You're too kind.
Very good. Well, thanks for being on. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Again, this was Changing the Climate, and everybody
Great.
take care.